Robert Sartore, KJ7JXM, is a native of the Pacific Northwest. He works as an installation manager at Accessory Options Auto Air and Heating and Hearing, specializing in commercial vehicle upfitting. Robert has been a ham since October of 2020 and has experience in POTA, FT8, WinLink, APRS, and the local 2-meter repeaters. He is active in the Puget Sound Repeater Group, the Lake Washington Ham Club, and on mic and key repeaters, offering his expertise to new and old hams alike. Robert enjoys traveling, off-roading in his Jeep, and spending time with his family and friends. Now to hear of his Parks on the Air experience as training lessons for EmComm.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Yeah, so you're going here. So what is kind of a little bit of an overview of what we'll be talking about today? Kind of just a real simple and easy program here. Introduction, they kind of already went about me. Pacific Northwest native, born and raised here in the Northwest. Yes, installation manager with Accessory Options Auto Air and Heating. I apologize for not proofreading that. Yes, my dogs Zeus, Millie, and yeah, whatnot. So let's see. Quick activity. What do you enjoy besides playing radio? Do you field day, kind of the hiking, camping, contesting, just collecting awards, the chasing the rare DX, the countries that are a little bit hard to get to that you don't normally get at home. Working weak signals, EME, satellites, backscatter, and the like. And then making contacts using digital modes, PSK, WinLink, RTTY, FT8, so many more than just that. And then even running QRP, not necessarily a necessity, but it's a good way to get about and try it with a little bit less of that home noise floor that we tend to run into. So a lot of people want to know, what is POTA? What makes Parks on the Air? It's here to get us outdoors and enjoying the radio, learning how to operate. I mean, really, it comes down to being able to get out and operate from anywhere using the radio and the equipment you have. And it doesn't need to be a lot of crazy equipment. It's basically field day 365 days a year. I can get out, I can play with my radios, my antennas, I can try different things, and I can do it anywhere. The parks, it started in 2016 as an ARRL program called Parks on the Air, National Parks on the Air, when it started out the national parks. Kind of wasn't, the demand for it was there. It was a lot of fun, and it kind of progressed through to people wanting more. There was so much exposure to the amateur radio, and the program was so successful. And you look at it now, and I don't have any numbers or stats in front of me, and I wish I would have grabbed some, but there's just so many people involved, thousands and thousands of people, and it's worldwide. It's not just here in the U.S. And you can do it two different ways. As an activator, getting out to the parks and activating, as they call it, or as a hunter, just sitting at home looking for that station calling POTA, CQ POTA, or if you're an FT8 person and you see a station calling CQ POTA, that's what it is. It's one of us out at a park saying, "Hey, we're here." Even looking for those park to park activations. And it doesn't take anything. You don't have to do anything special as a hunter. Just give us a contact. It's real simple, real easy. To do it as an activator, you're looking for the pre-approved locations. There's the website, the bottom of the screen there. A simpler, shorter one is just POTA.app. That'll take you right to the POTA website. That'll give you a lot of information about the parks that you can get to. You get there, you set up your radio gear, you make contacts. It's any contact that's simplex, any mode, D-Star. You can use DMR. You can use any mode, sideband, FM, any frequencies. Basically, anything that your license allows you to transmit on, you're completely allowed to utilize. Each park has its own designated number. Real easy to understand. Once you, as an activator, if you go to the website there, that whole guide shows you exactly what you need to do to get set up as an activator. No special equipment. Once everything's done, you submit your log to your area coordinator. You're done. It's that easy. It's some people think it's complex and you got to sign up for all these different logging groups, and you don't. If you want to log with QRZ, log with QRZ, log with Logbook of the World, logbook, paper log, however you want to log, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, the only log that you're concerned with configuring is the one that goes to your area coordinator. And that's all gone over in the Activators guide there for you. And again, you don't have to get out to all the different parks. You can go to the same park and do it over and over and over again. And different awards, different things to do, different ways to go about it. Lot of fun. I enjoy it. I've found that not only getting out there as an activator has taught me the importance of antennas and the learning of how the different antennas operate and different environments operate. And it's a lot of fun. Again, I can't stress how much fun it is. Wind, rain, sleet, snow, you kind of lose track of the environment when you're enjoying what you're enjoying. And then in the emergency aspect of it, I'm learning how to get out and activate anywhere. Setting up in my Jeep, I've managed to, because of the foul weather, I've managed to configure a few antennas using simple ham sticks. A lot of people don't like the ham sticks. They work fantastic for me. I get a lot of contacts with them, and I'm heard all over the place. And it's just different ways of trying things. And when that emergency time comes, I'm pretty confident that I'll be able to get to a situation or get to a position where I'll be able to make contacts and be able to get communications made. And learning and getting access on where those places are and making memories on where I can get into certain repeaters to see if they're still active, if they still work. Just driving around to get to some of these parks. And especially as an activator, you learn about parks in our backyard that we never knew were there ever. I've found so many parks in just the last year of doing this that I would have never guessed were even going to be a park in the area, especially as you drive to these and this beautiful park just exposes itself. Anyway, again, yeah, with activating, it's real easy, real simple. There is a couple steps to get set up to become an activator, but if you've been going to these parks that are already out there and you have your logs, I do believe, but I'm not 100% again, correct me if I'm wrong, but I do believe that you can get credit for some of these previous parks if you've already activated at them. And it takes 10 contacts. SOTA guys, they get a little easier. They got a lot harder work to do. But as a park activator, you can drive up to a lot of these parks and activate right from inside your car. Don't even need to get out. But that takes some of the fun out of it. It really does. And then for hunting, that's even easier. Everyone that sits at home, you're sitting at work, you're driving down the road, same thing. You hear someone calling POTA, make the exchange. It's real simple. There's other than a signal report and a location, that's really all they need. There's no formal, nothing else really needed. You submit your log as you would normally to whatever sources you would normally, and you're done. That's it. Excuse me, I gotta take a drink here real quick. And again, there is the website down below there that you can get to, that the stats.parksontheair.com info hunter's guide. hunter guide, there's another file there that'll help you understand a little bit more the details on the hunting aspect of it. But there's nothing really outside of making that signal report and submitting your logs through your normal channels that you normally would at your normal rate. If you like to get out and hunt, great. All the activators appreciate the hunting because it does make it easier for us. And to be able to switch bands, there's a lot of that can go on too to make that hunting a little easier and a little bit more functional. And then, again, getting started, parksontheair.com. Real easy, real simple. You can go there, familiarize yourself with all the rules. If you want to be an activator and put together a mobile portable station, that's really your biggest question. Are you going to activate from inside the vehicle, or do you want a full portable station, or both? I personally have both. I've got a couple rigs that I operate right from inside my Jeep, an IC705 that I set on my dashboard. It works fantastic. I've been amazed at what 5 to 8 watts can do and how far I can talk with a hamstick. And then getting out to some other parks, I've got a 30-foot mast antenna that I use with a long wire antenna that just goes, it's roughly 30 some feet long wire, goes to a 49-to-1 balun, 25 feet of coax to my IC7100, and I can do the same thing, rock and roll. I can make contacts all over the place, and that's good to 100 watts. So I've had a lot of fun. I did a lot of traveling doing it. It's gotten me out of the house. It's gotten me active, and again, learning the aspects of how to make these contacts both digitally and or sideband. I'm still working on the voice side of things. I'm having a little bit more fun getting involved with the voice stuff. It's not quite as easy, in my opinion, as the FT8 and some of the digital modes, but everyone activates a little bit differently. And so to operate as a portable or mobile operations, you just need a radio. You can do it with a basic 2 meter, 70 centimeter handheld. You don't need to be on HF. A lot of people want to say that I can't do it because I'm not a general. Yeah, you can. Get out and activate. You do have access to 6 meters. You have access to 10 meters. And there's a few other bands that if you know CW, you have access to those as well. And once you get out of the house and get away from the noise and into some of these parks, you'll be amazed at what you can do and how simple these contacts can be to make. An HF radio, I've got a 7100 that I use and an IC705, both EmComms, because they're really easy to integrate with my Surface tablet that I operate off of. It's real simple, real easy. I've got a pen and paper and an app on my phone for logging, and that's it. You want to run an antenna tuner, run an antenna tuner. If your QRP, the first thing I was told was make sure you run a resonant antenna, because an antenna tuner is just losing power at the antenna tuner. If you're running a resonant antenna, you're getting a little bit better, getting out there a little bit better. But that's what getting out and operating at these different parks is about, and learning and having fun. That's what it really is. And this, if you look at the list of equipment here, it's most of all the same stuff you probably have sitting at home on your bench right now. There's POTA operators that use the 2000s. They use 7300s. They use TS50s. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be a new rig. It can be an old rig. It doesn't matter what your radio is. If it works at home, bring a power supply. That's your biggest hurdle as a portable operator, is your power supply. Handful of batteries. The lithium batteries have come a long way. The cheap ones work fantastic still. Just watch your current consumption, and they got little meters that work great for that as well. And then just some kind of activation examples. This is my first activation was at St. Edward State Park. Unfortunately, my pictures didn't quite line up properly here, but that's a nice little portable rig that I purchased pre-set up from another ham, and it is an amazing setup. It's an IC7100 with an IT100 auto tuner and a Bioenno 20 amp hour battery. I can rock that thing all weekend long, running roughly 25 watts digital FT8. That's kind of what I run. And then I have a USB charger for a cigarette lighter adapter that plugs into that power star there from J-Pole John that allows me to also run a cigarette lighter charger for my Surface tablet. So I'm self-contained and self-sustained off that one battery, or multiple batteries, as I do tend to bring more than one battery with me. Over this last kind of summer, winter kind of transition, I took a nice little birthday drive and got out and activated 4 different states. I got out and did Idaho, Montana, and Utah, and Oregon. And it was a lot of fun. It got me out. I learned a lot. I think I had twice as many parks on my list to activate as I actually did. And at the end of the day, the biggest thing that I did learn is it's all about the antenna. And if you move your antenna around 10 feet, it can make a world of difference. And then being prepared. My very first run out was a complete and utter failure. Well, not a failure, because I learned a lot. The activation didn't happen. I didn't make a single contact, but I got out, I set everything up, and I learned that the antenna that I was using, that I knew nothing about, probably not a good time to try to learn everything about it. And then the park got busy, did get another antenna set up, and there was nothing but noise. And yeah, I learned that was probably a pretty bad location to try to do at that particular time. So, you know, you learn that locations can change with different times, different dates. And then getting out, did a big snow wheeling adventure with a bunch of friends. Took me up into the mountains, and while everyone else was playing off-road, I dipped off to the side and set up my radio, and again, learned a lot of valuable lessons. Had fun doing it, had fun setting it up, got to share my experiences, share the long wire antenna that I get to use, and just out and about having fun and seeing our wilderness. It's a learning curve. Everything about ham radio is learning. And this was another prime example of just pulling off the side of an off-road trail, setting up the situation as if I needed to make emergency contacts. In this situation, if I needed to have sent digital messages, I would have needed to learn a few lessons at that point in time to get those out. Voice, no problem at all. And that was one of the biggest lessons that was starting to be learned as I was out doing some of these mobile activations. Did a nice beach run. Another great example of learning the lessons of a resonant antenna with a simple antenna tuner and making sure that you have everything that you need for the job. I forgot one simple USB cable in this one. So we learned another lesson. Redundancy, and check your packaging before you leave. And that's what it's all about. It's, you know, it's a lot of fun to get out there, activate, see the parks, and just enjoy the scenery. And I wish the picture would show. I don't know if I can get this to slide over. Nope. But it was a gorgeous place, gorgeous area out there. Another day out activating at the same park, just having a lot of fun doing what I do, playing radio, setting up, a little bit more power, playing around with the buddy stick, and doing the FT8. That's what I enjoy the most. It's a little easier for me because I get mic fright sometimes. We all get that. And I don't necessarily know if it's mic fright, because we get over that. It's that logging. It's learning how to log. And that's what's the fun part is. That's the next hurdle, is getting to learn new things. And then as you get out there, you know, the reason why we get out to go to different parks, while what do they call it? Wall decorations, the awards, the the fun stuff for some. You don't, if you do it for the awards, great. If you don't, it doesn't matter. I don't necessarily do it for the awards. I enjoy them. But that's not the goal. The goal for me is getting out, activating, finding new parks, enjoying the new parks, and going from there. But there are all kinds of different awards out there. There's radar awards. So if you can get up and activate multiple times at multiple parks or within a certain park and travel certain distances, different awards for that, different techniques to learn different ways of operating. It's a lot of fun getting out there and just finding out what equipment you have, what works, what doesn't work, and go from there. So with that, what kind of questions do we have? Because I know we're going to have some questions out there.
Great. Thank you, Robert. Yeah, we do have some questions flowing in from the audience. And, I know I have some of my own and some of the Alan and or Catherine may have some as well. But yeah, we do have a couple of these. So one of them from Ted, I think that this was a great point that he made. So that funny story about the ham, I don't know, you wouldn't have seen this, Robert, because I think the story was in the chat, but it was about a ham who was working POTA who apparently got busted for quote unquote stealing electricity from a tree. Well, that was the antenna up there. Now, who knows whether or not that story is apocryphal, but it's a good question. Do park rangers generally know about POTA in case we get reported? Like sometimes people see somebody with a bunch of gear and wires running off to who knows where. If they're not familiar with what's going on, I could imagine them going to the ranger and saying, hey, there's something strange that I think you need to take a look at. Do you know whether rangers are fairly well informed about this?
It's becoming more and more known. One of the things that they do ask you as an activator, that if there is a rangers on site, to let them know. You're not necessarily asking for permission, but you are at the same time just letting them know that you're there to do a Parks on the Air activation. This is what you got, this is what you're planning to do, and this is where you would like to do it. And it's a courtesy to them to say, hey, this is why I'm here and this is what I'm doing. That way they don't think you're trying to set up some sort of bombs or something like that. Because some of our antennas can look quite suspicious, and you look at some of our battery boxes and they can look very suspicious. And I have gotten some very, very odd looks from passerbyers that are too afraid to ask anything. And there are some signs, and we try to promote the aspect of, hey, we're here doing Parks on the Air. Come ask us questions. There are flyers available. We can print them out and hand them out to people that come by and ask questions. Couple stories that I've got is one park I was activating and I had an officer drive by, pull around a second time and park right next to me and walk up and say, excuse me, can I ask you what you're doing? No problem. This is what I'm doing. This is who I am. Showed him my identification. And next thing I know, we're in a 45-minute conversation about he thought I might have been here as part of the local military exercise. And then B, would this be proper communications for while he's at his off-the-grid cabin? And as a police officer, it was a fantastic opportunity to say, well, the radios that you use now are the same basic technologies that you can use at your off-the-grid cabin, but at much higher frequencies and much higher ranges. And it was a great opportunity to spend and educate and kind of pull someone else into that ham opportunity. And then he admitted that he had a book at home and he'd wanted to look into it and just didn't have the time. But and then another instance, I was at a park and was activating, and just back corner off to the side, I had a couple people walk by, and then the park ranger pulled up to me and said, "You're doing a Parks on the Air activation, correct?" Yes, I am. And they go, "Well, have you ever thought about staying the night and doing it overnight here?" I did not know that there was any overnight camping in the area. And they said, "Well, there's not, but we do offer permits for special occasions. And that would fall under one of our special occasions. So if you stop by the ranger station let them know that you would appreciate one of those permits, then you could probably get one to camp overnight if you're interested. And it was kind of one of those, I learned something about that particular park. So
that's a great like insider tip there. Yeah.
Oh, it really was. Yeah.
Very cool.
Robert, you parks on the area relate that as being a very relaxing and enjoyable way, I think, to become prepared. Mm-hmm. And I was and following up on the parks. Are there any limitations as far as do you use just state or national parks, or can any park be used?
As I understand it right now, it's only state parks and national parks. The national parks is what started it as the POTA system. And then the POTA system came after they kind of closed the national system down, I believe, and brought it back up and brought a lot of that back in there. And is at the current time, I believe it is only state parks.
Thank you.
Gotcha.
Oh, sorry.
There are a series of questions kind of generally about equipment. So now you mentioned that the antenna was critical. So can you just elaborate a little bit more on the antenna systems that you use, what you've learned, how they've evolved over time? I mean, when I think about, the tie-ins between something like POTA and EmComm, obviously, as one of our folks, and you'll know who you are, is very fond of saying it's not amateur radio, it's amateur antenna, and there's a lot of truth in that. And so, what have been your findings? What are some of your favorites, pros and cons, that kind of thing? I know you said don't diss the ham stick. I got that part. But just share some general thoughts about antennas.
So the most successful antenna that I've found is a simple wire antenna. It's a EARCHI, or it's the Emergency Radio Club of Hawaii. They made I have their little 49-to-1 Unan, or Balun, I believe it is. And it just has, I think it's a 36-foot odd piece of wire, and you run a longer wire for different frequencies. And then I believe I use a 25 or a 50-foot piece of coax. And it uses the shield of the coax as your counterpoise. So you kind of play with the location and the layout of your coax and the different angles of the wire. And that was been my most successful antenna at most of the parks. Most recently, I switched and have, for simplicity, set up using the ham sticks off the mount on the side of my Jeep. Was a real efficient method. It worked. I could pull into the parking spot. If I didn't have a good signal, I can move to a different parking spot and probably get a better signal. And just operating right from the driver's seat of the Jeep was a fantastic opportunity. It posed a little less questions, but still got a pretty good amount of dirty looks from a guy sitting in his Jeep looking at computer screens as people are walking by. But again, getting out and offering that information to anybody who was there to ask was a really big thing. Most recently, again, at parks, if I'm not operating off the ham sticks, I've been playing with a Buddy Stick Pro, and it's really easy. It's a 5 to 10 minutes to deploy the antenna, a couple minutes to tune it with the counterpoise, and then another maybe 5 minutes to pack it all back up and move on to the next location. So it's been a fantastic, compact, functional antenna. And I've only used it a couple times so far, and I've loved it every time. And I plan on actually setting it up here this afternoon and seeing what I can do here at the house with a new 7100 that I'm playing with.
You mentioned portable power systems, the Bioleno battery, for instance, and that's noted, at least for charging, for low noise. I was wondering if you've encountered any self-generated noise issues that you've had to address.
I haven't noticed any noise coming off of the batteries. The only time I did get any potential noise was when I ran my my laptop charger off of the same battery that was powering the radio. And that was using the end fed. And there are a few different techniques to kind of pull some of those noise out of the RF space, but for the most part, the only time I've ever really seen any noise would be with some of the chargers out there. And generally when I'm at the park, I'm not charging. And if I do need to charge, I've just recently picked up a DC-DC charger from PowerWorks, but I haven't had the opportunity to use it because both of the batteries I have will last me my entire trip, and I haven't depleted either one of them yet.
And for the future, obviously you're not using it now, but are you considering solar?
I do have solar. My Jeep is equipped with a 100-watt solar panel mounted on the roof. And the funny story behind that is I did that because I have a refrigerator in the back of the Jeep for the summertime because I like to consume a lot of water. And I prefer my water to be nice and cold. So if I have cold water on hand, I find I will drink more water than if I don't have cold water on hand. And it just made it has made camping even simpler because now I have cold storage that doesn't require ice or dry ice to stay cold. And the aftermarket battery, because I have an upgraded aftermarket battery in the Jeep, would sustain that charger no problem overnight in the majority of a second day or a full day. But anytime I got longer than that, I would run that risk of running the battery dead and needing to then hope that my jump box is charged up enough to give myself a jump. So adding the solar panel has allowed me to leave that vehicle for a 4-day period, come back to it, and it start, no questions asked, no problems at all. Cooler's cold, water's cold, and if I've got any food or anything in it, it's cold too. So
Wonderful.
It's so important to stay hydrated. So there you go. That's cool. So another equipment question, and I was actually sort of wondering about this too. Is the rack that you purchased, is that commercially available? I saw that in a couple of the photos there, and Bruce asked that question also.
Yes, it is. So that rack it's through a specific manufacturer that makes a specific mounting kit for it that mounts it through my hardtop. It's a what's the name of the rack? Rhino Rack is who makes the platform, and they make their own mounting kit for it as well. But the kit I have is the Maximus 3, and that company produces a bracket kit that, like I said, bolts through the hardtop itself, and so I can take the hardtop off and still have that rack up there. It also gives it considerably more carrying capacity. If you look at my QRZ page, there's a picture of a 50-foot tower resting on top of that rack, and it did transport that over, oh man, that was a couple hundred miles, I want to say. It was southern Washington, and I drove it up to Lake Stevens. Up to
That's
my
pretty
KJ7JXM
impressive.
here. And yeah, it did a fantastic job the whole way.
Yeah, very cool.
Any sensitivity to heating issues, either in your equipment or that you've had to maybe shield from the sun or provide some shade?
Not necessarily that I'm aware of. I mean, when I'm activating in the Jeep with the radio on the dashboard, it hasn't exactly been sunny days when I'm doing it. That's why I'm doing it from inside the Jeep. And I do have an awning on the side of the Jeep that I can deploy if I need to have a shaded spot to operate from. But for the most part, I mean, we don't get a ton of sun here in the Northwest, so finding shade's usually not too big of a problem around here. But yeah, making sure and having a shaded area definitely can make it easier to operate from. And that was another reason why I wanted to make sure and have the awning on the side of the Jeep there. So if I needed a covered space to operate from, either from the wind, rain, or sun, then I could do so.
And I imagine too that would help as far as seeing the laptop screen.
Most definitely. Yeah, and there are commercially available higher end laptops that have really, really bright screens, but I'm just running a used Surface Pro laptop or Surface Pro tablet that I've picked up. It's been phenomenal. It does all the digital needs I've needed it for. It's done all the Zoom work I've needed it to do. And and it's been a fantastic device for me. And I keep everything backed up among multiple cloud servers, so that if I do have an issue or I'm out activating and I do lose my device or it becomes damaged, destroyed, or whatever, I'm not out everything. I can go back to those cloud devices, servers, log back in, and re-download all of that information that I had on the device originally.
Great, thank you.
Good stuff. Hey, there's a clarification question about the rack, and so this is like, I think the person asking was actually asking about the rack that's inside. So there was a multi-layer rack that had the radio on it, and it had some other probably power systems and stuff like that. You know the one I mean? It looks like it's got some posts and platforms.
Yes, that is not. That is a homebrew. That particular rack, I believe, I did not build it. I bought that radio that way from another ham, but it is all thread with just plywood. It's been used with double nuts on either side of the plywood to hold it in place.
That's kind of what it looked like. I wondered if it was something like that. Yeah, it looks handy. And then, of course, the nice thing there is you can easily space the shelves out however you need to for whatever the height is of the different pieces that are inside it.
All those devices are mounted to that rack. So when I unhook the cables, I can stuff the rack right inside the box with everything inside of it. And that's kind of that deployment scheme with it, is just pull it out, connect the cables, and away I go.
So there was a question, which is fairly general. I mean, in a way, you could almost do a whole presentation just on this, but I think it's an important one, and I'm going to tack on a piece to it. And the question is, what equipment is essential for you operating from the field? I mean, you've obviously talked through a lot of different stuff that you use, but do you have like a checklist or something like that? Do you have your bare bones minimum and then your preferred equipment list? How do you manage knowing that you have all the right things when you're about to, drive away from home for a certain period of time?
That I'm learning. I don't have anything at the moment, but I am learning that I do need something like that. Yes, having a full built checklist is very important. I've tried to narrow down my operating equipment. The IC7705 is an extremely feature-packed radio, and having its own Wi-Fi, I can use just the radio and my tablet and need nothing else besides those two items and my antenna. So it's at the end of the day, the three items, my tablet, my radio, and my antenna, are all that's really needed. The 705 also having its own battery in it, you don't need a power supply. I generally, in my vehicle, always keep one of my batteries, and just usually the larger one, so that if I'm ever out somewhere and I need a 12-volt power source, I have it. In my main Go box that I try to keep on me at all times, I have backup chargers for my tablet and power pole connectors. Everything I've got has been converted to power poles, and I've even converted one of the outlets in the back of the Jeep over to power pole. So I have that available for all my gear, all my equipment. If I need to charge anything, I'm good to go. And then if I had it floating around here, I'd show you, but I even made a cigarette lighter adapter for power pole so that I can plug that into any of my batteries, and now I have a cigarette lighter at port that can run any 12-volt accessory.
I did that too. Yeah. I mean, as far as like making sure I'm not missing anything, sometimes I've found it helpful to kind of picture the electrons going all the way from their source to out in the atmosphere, right? So that takes me from a battery or whatever the power source is through the necessary cabling to the radio, to the feed line, to the antenna. Takes care of that side of things. Obviously, there's a whole lot more to it than that, but that's one sort of shorthand that I've found somewhat helpful in thinking about that and just making sure I don't forget stuff.
Yep.
I believe you might have mentioned about logging, and I imagine you do that through the laptop. Do you any particular software that you like to use for logging?
So I do a lot of my logging, well, because the majority of what I do is FT8, the logging is done automatically through WSJTX. So at the end of the weekend or the end of the trip, I just I change my operator to my park call sign, and that allows me to go through my log and pull all those contacts out with that operator, and then put those into a new file to submit to the area coordinator. As for logging on for phone and voice contacts, I have been playing with an app that has worked for some people and not worked for others. Let's see if I can find it here. Called HamRS. It works great as a initial logging device. It's not great for editing your log. And that's where a lot of people I see that seem to have some of the confusion and problems with it, is when they try to go back and edit things. But at the end of the day, a good old-fashioned paper and pencil is or paper and pen is the best way to go. And that has been, and honestly, that's been my downfall to why I haven't done as much voice contacts, is because I fear that logging sequence. And so I've been practicing listening to nets and writing call signs down and trying to put that audio to motion versus putting motion to audio. Talking is a lot easier to do than it is to listen and write. That's always been one of my not downfalls, but shortcomings, and it kind of learned to overcome some of that stuff. So that's one of my biggest lessons I'm starting to learn.
Pay attention, you app developers out there, to this. Thank you.
That's right. But that's one of the biggest lessons, when we think about the lessons in this for us as emergency communicators, that's a really, really important one, is that, and by the way, what you just mentioned is a fantastic suggestion for folks to, when you're hearing nets, whether or not you're involved in that net directly, it's an opportunity for you to practice copying things down. Copying down call signs, copying down summaries of what was said. It's not like copying formal message traffic, but if you think about being able to think on the fly and summarize what you've heard on a net sometime in an emergency situation, that may be very important. And it also will make the formalized voice message traffic passing that much easier, because if you're trying to scramble and write down something that's being said probably rapidly, probably in a not very formal way, if you get halfway decent at that, you're going to just crush it when it comes to formal message copying, and the place for that. So I think that's one of the places where we see this being super applicable for us as emergency communicators. Robert, simple question here: is this available in Canada? Do you know if Canada supports or has a similar Parks on the Air program?
Yes, they do. As far as I know, I couldn't tell you the details behind it, but it is a worldwide program. I believe you can go to the same POTA.app website and register just as anywhere. I'm pretty sure it's not specific to any one location.
Great. I have a couple of general thoughts about this. These aren't questions, but just some other thoughts I wanted to share and bounce off of you a little bit. But one of them is just, before you operate in one of the parks, you've got to get your gear there. And sometimes you're operating, it looked like right next to the vehicle, but not always. And when I think back to like some of the pictures that Scott Dakers shared with the aftermath of Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico, like when the infrastructure really gets damaged so severely, everything becomes nature in a sense, because the pathways through to wherever you have to set up and operate, you can't count on just being able to drive your vehicle up and setting up your stuff right next to it. And so that's another good lesson, thinking about what is human packable, human portable for when you're not right next to the vehicle. That's something we got to think about as emergency communicators. And it's not necessarily because we're going to be way out in the wilderness. It may be hard to travel 5 blocks after a big earthquake or something like that. And you may have a need or a request to operate portable in that kind of situation. So this is another place where I think this is just really good practice for some of the things that we might have to do in an emergency.
Definitely. And there are certain parks that you do have to hike into. Pilchuck, Mount Pilchuck is one of those particular parks where it's approximately, I think, a half a mile hike from the parking lot to get within park bounds. The parking lot itself is not actually within the Pilchuck Mount Pilchuck Park.
Cool.
That kind of crosses into a soda.
There is a soda there too. That's and that's where if you decide to go even further, and most definitely, you can get all the way up there and do a soda and a POTA at the same time, and your one contact can count for both systems, and that's the beauty of a lot of this stuff. So
that's pretty cool. I didn't know that one.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of parks. And the one thing I had mistakenly spoken, it's not just state parks. There's a lot of wildlife refuges and wildlife areas and such that are also part of that system. And I stress to everybody, even if you've got no intentions on activating, go check out that POTA.app website and view the map. It's real easy, real simple, and all those little yellow dots are all the different parks that you can activate. Or that people can go to and be activating from. And doing park to park is another special type of award system that's out there. So if you and your friends are doing it, instead of everyone going to one park, try getting out to different parks. And that's also going to stress on that EmComm of getting out in different locations and communicating with each other. Creating those scheduled times to say, hey, at 10 o'clock on this day, let's all try to be on this frequency. From these parks and make games out of it and have fun, because that's what we're really trying to do, is learn and have fun, and then be prepared for those times where it's not fun anymore, but we need to do it and it needs to be done, but we know that we can rely on so and so to get to a certain point and make that communication, because we've done it 100 times before, so let's get it done and let's make these communications and help people out.
For sure. So one other equipment question. So there's the expression 2 is 1 and 1 is none. So are there common issues that you've encountered as far as needing spares? How do you decide what to carry spares of? And maybe in your experience, are there certain things that you've had to have a spare of more often than others?
USB cables. With the digital work that I was doing, that was the biggest thing that I first learned, was trying to find spares and making sure that some of the bugs were worked out of those. Outside of that, power, just making sure you've got backup power. If you've got one battery you use all the time, make sure you have a secondary to rely on in case that one's dead or fails in some sort. Extra connectors, cables, power cords, stuff like that can always be helpful and redundant for if you lose one, break one, or God forbid the dog chews on one. And then just antennas, having more than one antenna, I have found has been the biggest thing. And potentially an antenna tuner or an antenna analyzer to make sure that your antenna is where it needs to be. That's another one of the key tools that I try to always have when I'm activating, is to make sure that, with the QRP game, a resonant antenna is everything. They tell you a properly resonant antenna is going to do more on low power. Even with a high power rig, you don't need to crank up the power because you're not doing anything extra with 100 watts than I can with my watts on a resonant antenna. So, and when I learned that the very first time, just making I had the wire thrown up in the shop, inside my cinder block shop. And I made a contact with a guy in California, 5 watts. I wasn't plugged into external power. And he heard me, said 5x9. Wait a minute. You can hear me perfectly clear. My piece of wire is inside my shop, and you're in California, and you can hear me like we're on a phone call. It blew my mind on how well that worked. And he was running massive power, and that was the funny part, is we heard each other the same, and I was low power and he was high power. But
those are some of the kinds of contacts that really stick with you. And so that wire that you're talking about, I'm assuming, was resonant. You had cut that right to resonance.
Well, that was the EARC.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
And that antenna in is its most compact. I mean, it's that big of a package. It all fits into a small Ziploc bag. I can toss it in with. I use a. I actually have it right here. A small Apache ammo can. Oh, you can't see it because my. Never mind. The background's going to block it out, but I just use an Apache 3800 plastic box, and that fits the 705, an MFJ analyzer, 25 feet of coax, the antenna, and the 20 amp hour battery, as well as some minor accessories, and that all fits in that one box. And then I carry a backpack that usually has another piece of coax in it and my tablet, and I'm ready to rock and roll.
Very cool. Well, Robert, thank you so much for sharing this about Parks on the Air. I think you've probably inspired a lot of interest in among the folks in doing this. So thank you for coming to Comm Academy 22. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I really enjoyed presenting, and yeah, I hope a lot of people do get out and you know, if you don't want to get out and activate, hey, at least respond to some of those CQs that you may have been afraid to respond because you didn't understand before.
Absolutely.